Geology, geology, geology. So today, flexibility, patience, and improvisation. So here are my three keywords to deal with the pragmatic side of the coronavirus situation that is pushing all society all over the world to a lockdown. So welcome everybody to the Mini Geology radio show. This is your inquisitive geologist, Daniel Minizini. And with us today, we have the great Katie Donahue here with me. Katie, you're there?
Hey, I gotta try to remember which way to point when I want to say hello to you, and hello to all of the geologists and geology fans that are listening today. It's a pleasure to be here with you during this lockdown.
Yeah, thank you. Katie and Casey, they are friends of Mini Geology. Casey is in the background there. Katie is in the foreground. So as I said, flexibility, patience, and improvisation. There's three things because the outcome of all the remote meetings, the remote workshops and teaching depends on the temperament of each of us. It depends also on the strength of the internet connection. So it depends also how it goes today. This is the very first time we do the video, maybe the first time I show my face. And so it depends on the internet connection in the household and also on the familiarity you have with the new technologies. This is a very stressful moment, but we're still working, we're still teaching, we are still learning. So we do not let it go, but it seems that we are flying the plane as we are building the plane. So we are here talking to you, trying to bring together the ideas, news, and views from the people of the geological community, national and international, to try to create a space where we, the geological community, we talk. Katie, do you want to say what we're going to try to do today?
Yes. So today, I think it's a good opportunity for Mini Geology to help share this platform for the community, the geological community, and talk about how we're dealing with the COVID-19 situation. So we're asking three questions on how the coronavirus situation is affecting our geological community. And we're asking students, professors, professionals, executive directors and management, and the geological associations, including the American Geoscience Institute, National Association of Geoscience Teachers, presidents of many of the geological societies. Three main questions. One, what are the main problems the coronavirus is posing today to the geological community? Two, are there going to be any positive outcomes from what we're experiencing right now? Are we learning something from this? What is the bright side we can look to? And three, through our geological community, as we work through this and getting towards the end of this experience, do you think it's going to be business as usual and we'll just go back to how things were? Or do you think that there's going to be something new on the other end? So those are the three questions that we're going to be talking to people about and going over their answers today.
And today we are reporting the views and news of the aforementioned people to you. So we will read verbatim their answers that they sent through emails to Mini Geology. And if you want to write to Mini Geology, it's minigeology@gmail.com. And some of the answers, we translate them because they came from Italy and Spain and Venezuela also. We translated into English, and some have been also reduced for the sake of brevity. So in a summary, this is the outcome. The very first question about problems. So mainly the problems are the cancellations of activities, cancellation of meetings, cancellation of the lab analysis. There's no more field work. It is difficult to handle the online courses and almost impossible to replicate in an online environment the activities at the heart of the geological courses. That, as we know, they are the field trips, the hand sample descriptions, the work that we do with the microscope. The simple drawing of a cross section is going to be very difficult to do it online. These are the main problems. There are positive outcomes. Some pessimists, they say there's no positive outcome, but most of the geologists, they are optimists. And so going virtual, even if not perfect, is not the same. Going virtual has a positive is a positive feedback, is a positive thing, positive enough to warrant continuation. So also learning new technological skills is another positive outcome, and more time for writing papers and proposals. Also, we are in a way forced to communicate more widely, more wisely, and another extra thing is that since we don't move, there's less pollution. A third point is the aftermath. So first of all, nobody proposed that this situation of the COVID-19 will never be over. And the most important positive outcome so far is that our community, the geological community, has come together rapidly around the challenges described. And the answers received at Mini Geology are certainly a proof of it. I receive a lot of answers very quick from people that they are at the top of companies or associations to students or professors that are working all over the world. So thank you for those answers. Thank you also for asking, since you know I have family in Spain and Italy, thank you for asking about my family, how they're doing, and they're doing well. So the benefits of virtual connection, the cost, the ease, they supersede these concerns. So there will be more online work. There will be more online teaching and online conferences. This is what the community thinks. There will be less movement of people and goods, and therefore a more sustainable life and the potentially decreasing carbon footprint. So let's go and hear the words from the protagonists. Katie, you can start reading verbatim what the executive, the director of the AGI said.
Okay. And I think I'd mentioned before that I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name beforehand. So this is the response, and I'll just read it directly from the AGI Interim Executive Director, Sharon Tahirkali. So first of all, identifying the main problems related to COVID-19, it's the disruption of our work environment for the professionals. Many are used to working in any environment. That is just part of the discipline. However, some areas have instituted sudden and somewhat unexpected work-at-home policies. This does not allow for preparation and has left some researchers locked out of their labs and offices. The same is true for the current graduate students. Some are contemplating how they will do their research work, especially if they needed to travel. And if this goes on for a long period, an entire field season may be lost for some of these graduate students. A positive outcome that she sees, geoscientists are being required to communicate more widely in ways that they're not necessarily accustomed to. Replacing face-to-face interaction with online images may result in improved communication overall. In the academic environment, the move to online instruction is being accelerated, opening up instruction to wider student populations. This can be both a positive and a negative, given the value of the labs and the field trips to the discipline. And then finally, the aftermath she sees, the long-term virus may have rewritten how researchers communicate and collaborate by forcing new modes and adaptations. So that was her feedback, and I think that's really kind of a wise point from the point of view of the aftermath. She's, who's to say whether it's a positive or a negative, but things will just be different, changing communication.
And here we are for the very first time with Mini Geology having a video using Skype today. Probably we'll move to another platform. So excuse the wrong things that would happen during this recording. Then I'd like to read you what one of the directors of the National Research Councils in Italy told us. Italy, as you know, is at the unfortunate vanguard of the Western democracies, grappling with the virus and the uncomfortable ethical choices and consequences of the virus. So it was the first country to lock down The very first was to stop the economy, to decide whom to cure in the hospitals, and now whom to allow to go back to work. All of these things are happening for the very first time in a Western democracy in Italy. So Italy today is represented in this mini geology show by two people. One is Fabio Trincardi. He is the director of the largest department of the National Research Council in Italy. The department is called Earth System Science. And I translate his feedback. He says, "This is certainly a moment to rethink about our work and our research. We have a great opportunity ahead. Under the COVID circumstances, having some more quality time at home, we could have a collective reflection and change our priorities, leaving aside the impulse of writing one more paper or meeting the GPA goals. Maybe it could be worth to study, reflect, and debate how we geologists could play a role in these three elements affecting the environment and the economy for the good." These are the three elements. Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations in 2015. The Sustainable Development Goals are a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. 2. The concept of planetary boundaries, a concept proposed by the Stockholm Resilience Center in the Australian National University in 2009. The identification and quantification of the planetary boundaries within which humanity can continue to develop and thrive for generations to come. The understanding that crossing these boundaries increases the risk of generating large-scale, abrupt, and irreversible environmental changes. 3. Circular economy. Circular economy aims at eliminating both the continual use of resources and waste. The imperative of circular economy is use, reuse, remake, recycle, make, and use again. This regenerative approach is in contrast to the traditional linear economy, which has a take, make, dispose model of production. It'd be great if we could come back after the coronavirus with a debate on our new role in society, rather than with the attitude of business as usual. So this was Fabio Trincardi, the director of Earth System Science at the National Research Council. Then we have the president of the Geological Society of Italy. His name is Sandro Conticelli.
And so to read his comment that he provided on his reflections of the impact of COVID-19 is that to tackle the COVID-19 infection, we've been requested to stay at home and not move from there. 1, what is the main problem? Impossibility to perform our analysis in the field in the labs. You just can't do it. Number 2, what's the positive outcome? There are no positive outcomes. I think he's on the pessimistic side of some of this. And number 3, in the aftermath, it's the delay of our activity. And then he has a final statement of, as a director of a research center active in the prevention of natural and geological disasters, we hope that the Earth dynamics will also be on lockdown.
Yeah.
We can hope that will happen, but we also hope that then the work will continue when people can get back to the lab in the field.
I think you can read the stress in between the lines of the president of the Geological Society of Italy, a very laconic comment, but also with that pinch of irony typical of Italians.
But also, I think kind of typical when you're in the middle of dealing with the problem. Maybe not. Some people don't appreciate being asked to find the bright side when they're in the middle of it. Maybe we can check back in a few months and see what his thoughts are then.
We also receive feedback from the president of the Geological Society of Spain. She told us that the main problems are some activities had to stop, impossibility to work in the field and in the lab, because universities and research centers are closed. As a consequence, results of some research projects can't be obtained. The geology courses at the universities are done through online classes, but some activities are difficult online, such as microscope labs, geochemistry, and so on. Some research meetings have been cancelled. In the Geological Society of Spain, we do Geologia, which means Geology Day, and consists of 55 contemporaneous field trips spread in all the country, open to the general audience to show what is geology and why it is useful to society at large. These 55 field trips should be run on May the 9th and the 10th, so the COVID forced us to cancel them. We have had to modify the format, so we will not do the field trip, but we will try to produce a few videos about those outcrops. Positive outcome. I'm sure many of us are concentrating more in the writing of proposals and papers. We will be able to finish some of the work we didn't have time to finish during our typical routine. Scientific production will probably increase in the following months. We are getting used to new tools such as online work, specifically teaching. That may change the way of working in the future. If so, in the future, we will work more at home. That will probably improve our family life and bring down pollution, especially in the cities. 3, about the aftermath. A thought on the aftermath. Most are not specifically for geology. We have to think on a more sustainable life, maybe getting the resources we need from nearby. This would mean less transport of people and goods and necessarily contribute to less harm of similar pandemic. So that was very interesting. What do you think, Katie, about this Geologia, the Geology Day?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that would be amazing if we could have something similar here in Houston, even. I know Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts generally have a day where they can earn their badge and people participate in that. But maybe spreading it out, making sure it's open and available to any interested person, and they really connect with the geology that's around them at wherever they may live. There's a way to interact. So I will try to remember for May 9th and 10th that maybe it should be call a neighbor and tell them some local geology they could participate in, and we could start it that way.
Yeah, we need to thank the president of the Geological Society of Spain, Ana Maria Alonso Zarza. Ana Maria told me that the Geology Day consists of these 55 contemporaneous field trips, that all of them are free. They are free, and 9,000 people, they register every year.
Wow.
And the field trips are led by hundreds of professional geologists, and they are supported by the Ministry of Science. So yes, it's a very important thing, and thank you, Ana Maria Alonso Zarza, President of the Geological Society of Spain.
Those were great comments. That was a really good idea. And let's see, next we have some comments from the president of GSA, Donald Siegel. He's at the Department of Earth Sciences at Syracuse University. So first of all, what are the main problems he sees? Well, we've had to cancel our regional meetings, and we have to do the same with our annual meeting in Montreal. Our supportive field research and teaching likewise has been curtailed. Our staff in Washington, D.C. have personally been able to contact people on the Hill, but other parts of our mission have been less affected because of our web-based presence, which is including our publications arm, networking, and subdisciplinary communities. We are, of course, examining how to adapt and continue to support the geoscience community. The positive outcomes he sees, for this he says, the way all professional societies do business will have been changed forever by the time COVID-19 plays out. For example, the European Geological Union canceled its large conference in Vienna this May, but it's attempting to conduct almost its entire conference online, sessions, major addresses, posters, etc. If their efforts prove successful, it will, in his opinion, change the way other geoscience societies do conferences. Zoom now is a verb, much as Google became one. Like, I'll Zoom you into a meeting soon. GSA is doing all of its administration virtually. We found this virtual change far more positive than not. Not perfect, not the same, but positive enough to warrant continuation. So as far as the aftermath, he says, business as usual or something new. GSA's executive director, Dr. Vicki McConnell, suggested that COVID-19 is a black swan moment in history. There will be no more business as usual. And I agree. How science is taught and communicated, how scientists interact, and how conferences will be held has changed forever. Virtual platforms will inherently become better and faster now that people find they work well enough in this moment. They will want even better formats. I prior did not think this possible, but in the last week or so, I've given virtual seminars and talks at Harvard, Syracuse University, and other places, and they went remarkably well. Enjoyable, fun. Same with the GSA administrative meetings. I now have virtual dinners with my family, different food, but great communication. Someone told me the aphorism, excellence is the enemy of good, and good is the enemy of adequate. Right now, virtual applications are mostly adequate to good. Some wring their hands because the experience may not be as excellent as person to person, but the benefits of these virtual connections, cost and ease, etc., supersede these concerns. I think GSA is well positioned through its strategic plan to virtually deliver outstanding scientific products and experiences to help our members advance their careers and advance geoscience for society. And we are moving to increase our future capabilities to this end. So all in all, pretty positive.
Yeah, and the president of GSA, who was very proactive in sending me material and providing answer views, I really thank you. He really represents the geological community. And he mentioned the strategic plan. So the strategic plan, GSA made it on time to decide what it was going to be before the coronavirus situation. And you can find it online, but it's so important that I would like to read you the 5 main pillars on which it is based. The 5 pillars are: number 1, advancing scientific discovery, rigor, and integrity. The second pillar is supporting early career professionals and students. The third, hosting premier conferences and meetings. The fourth pillar, influencing geoscience policy and linking geoscience to society. And the fifth pillar of the strategic plan of GSA, providing a sense of community and venues for networking. So these were some of the protagonists that they answer our questions. We didn't receive answer from the emails we sent to the Geological Society of London, so representing the United Kingdom. We did receive a confirmation of from AAPG, but the president of AAPG couldn't answer and he couldn't give us some specific answers. Anyhow, he'll be in touch with us and will report his views. Who else do we have, Katie?
From the National Association of Geoscience Teachers, we have the executive director, Anne E. Egger. And her reply was, for the first one, the main problems they're experiencing within the community of geoscience educators, many people are now suddenly teaching online, many for the first time. We are capable of learning new teaching techniques and strategies, but it's more challenging when time is limited and when you have a delivery method imposed upon you rather than being able to start with the learning goals. There are some particular challenges with geology courses. Field trips, of course, in the labs that depend on hand samples, microscopes, drawing cross sections, things that are difficult to replicate in an online environment. We know that, so the challenge is to develop meaningful and deep learning opportunities that are quite different from what we're used to. So at least I was, start with identifying the problem. That's good. It sounds like they're making progress. So then the positive outcomes that she sees is the most important positive outcome so far is that our community has come together rapidly around the challenges I described. In collaboration with the Science Education Resource Center, the National Association of Geoscience Teachers assembled a set of resources that support teaching geoscience online, set up an email list and a way to share resources, and recently hosted a webinar for Suddenly Teaching Geoscience Online. I love the title. that brought together a lot of best practices specific to our discipline. We're collaborating with the International Association for Geoscience Diversity and a large group of field camp directors to begin to discuss alternative field camps. While this is an immediate need right now, there has been a growing demand for capstone field experiences that are accessible to a broader audience, and we hope this challenge can be turned into an opportunity to broaden access. In addition, many of us are learning new teaching techniques that can be helpful, whether or not we are teaching online. I could never manage to set aside the time to learn some of the things I'm doing now, so I think there is a positive outcome for individuals in professional learning. We're learning more about students through this process too, which can only help us better support them. And then finally, as far as the aftermath, is it business as usual or something new? Some of both. I think we will be anxious to get back into the field in the classroom and teach in person and take students out in the field, but we will see more willingness to accommodate other modes of learning and flexibility in the face of future challenges. Conversations about the sustainability of large in-person meetings and travel were happening before COVID-19. And I think this experience will force everyone to consider alternative models that also decrease our carbon footprint. There will undoubtedly be a major impact on institutions of higher education and our students. I'm hopeful that we can recover and be even stronger than before, but it will take time.
Yeah, thank you to Anne. And if you need, go to the National Association of Geoscience Teachers. It could be very useful, not only to learn how to teach, but also to learn yourself. The website is very easy, is the acronym of National Association of Geoscience Teachers, NAGT.org. And do not forget also this other association that was mentioned in here, the International Association for Geoscience Diversity. Yes. This also has an important website where whoever has problems and feels to belong to the geoscience diversity group, we could go here and learn a lot. Also, for people that they don't see themselves belonging to this association, it would be very useful to go to the IAGD and understand how our fellow geologists that they have disabilities, how they feel, how they see geology. This is a completely different point of view, and I encourage you to go and see and talk with them. They have a great president that was our guest in one of the mini geology interviews a couple of months ago.
Sounds good.
I think that then we have a more political message from another guest that we have in the past at Mini Geology, the executive director of Greenpeace in New Zealand, Russell Norman. And in his website, we read, if we can show a quick response to the environmental emergencies as we are doing with the coronavirus, we would be projected into a new society, probably better and more just than the one we live in today. By thoughtfully targeting the fiscal stimulus packages of governments around the world, we have an opportunity to put our economy and society on a path that improves well-being and drives changes in lifestyle that promote positive environmental and health outcomes. To discount the ongoing climate, biodiversity, and inequality crisis, while you rightly mobilize government resources to resolve the COVID-19 crisis. As the Lancet and World Health Organization note, climate change is likely to have major consequences on infectious disease transmission. Thinking ahead to prevent the next public health crisis means acting now to address climate, biodiversity, and inequality crisis. So I think that, Katie, I surf a little bit the social network to see what was going there. I don't do much more than Twitter and LinkedIn, but I found some interesting things in here. I found, especially in Twitter, several professors that they were helping each other. And at some point, somebody, I couldn't reach the very first seed who put the very first seed, but they created a spreadsheet with more than 50 options of online courses. All of them, they are free, and
Great.
they go from the courses that they are done and provided by MIT to the USGS. They go from basic geology to virtual field trips.
That's fantastic.
And I have the link. See if I'm able to share my screen so that we can see the spreadsheet. It's a very is a skeleton of that spreadsheet. But let me see if I can share the screen. Do you see the screen, Katie?
Yes, I can. That's great.
So in here you have, you see in the top left, let's share the burden. Many
Yes.
geoscientists have already created online materials. So in here you have 3 columns, very easy: the topic, the description, and the link.
That's great. I
So
hope some people who are even listening to this have some they can contribute and even just share the education. That's great.
let me go back now to Skype, and here I am.
So now we have some responses that come from some professors and students. This is an excerpt from a New York Times article from March 30th of this year from Anemona Hartopoulos. But actually, it sounds like the quote is from Carlos Polanca, who is a junior at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, and Rick Danheiser, the chair of the Faculty of Chemistry at MIT. So Carlos says, it would be amazing if I could just focus on my classes, but I have a lot of other people depending on me. So now he is back in Clifton, New Jersey. He's helping homeschool his 12-year-old sister, doing household chores, and worrying about the health of his relatives in the Dominican Republic. Professor Rick Danheiser says, the reality is that the performance of students this semester is not only going to reflect the mastery of a subject, but also the differences between students due to their different health situations, the health of their loved ones, different access to technology, and different home situations. Students and professors like Carlos and Rick are pushing their institutions to set aside grades during the outbreak and ask for a universal pass, simplified with the acronym UP, meaning that nobody would fail regardless of performance and whether they can continue to take online classes, and that letter grades would be abolished. The students argue that the chaos caused by the virus falls hardest on those with the least resources, and the idea has acquired petition campaigns on scores of campuses. However, the debate is one of particular concern to students that are trying to raise their grade point averages in their final year or two of college to qualify for scholarships and to qualify for law, medical, or business schools. Some fear it will hurt their chances if their college careers end with a pass instead of the traditional high marks. As a consequence, many universities have adopted a pass-fail system. They've tried to preserve the option for letter grades. However, the concern that professional students might look askance at a pass grade from undergraduates might prove to be overblown. A Yale spokesman said that the university's professional schools would not hold pass-fail grades against applicants, whether the choice to forego letter grades was theirs or the institution's. And the medical school at the University of California, San Francisco said it would accept pass-fail marks without prejudice for classes taken during this pandemic.
The problem is highlighted also by a Broad College student. In here, I'll read some excerpts from the New York article, also March 30th, written by Sidney Goines, writing about herself. Sidney is a senior at the University of Georgia. She said, I work part-time at the university's most popular dining hall and live in a cramped house with 3 other students. I don't have a car. The dining hall I work at remain open, preparing to-go meals for those still living in their dorms without a place to go. Then the dining hall closed. I thought I could find another restaurant job or hopefully an internship during the summer until I could apply to grad school again. Those odds are not in my favor anymore. Many restaurants have closed indefinitely. They are not hiring anytime soon. For college students like me, the current solutions are File for unemployment. Find a job at Kroger at the detrimental of your physical health. Call your potentially toxic parents. Tax refund, personal loan, sell your belongings. These options are not good enough.
No.
College was supposed to give us hope for our financial future, not place us back in our parents' house without jobs.
Right. Right. That's hard. All right. The next one comes from Sin T. Lee. He's the chair of the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences at Rice University. And so, as he writes, for the first time in my life, I'm actually scared. The world's population will, of course, get through this in time, but with an immense cost in terms of lives. COVID shows that the world is so interconnected, yet countries do not cooperate with each other. From water, energy, food, natural resources to health, we're learning the lessons of not cooperating. Perhaps COVID is the wake-up call that we need to work together rather than against each other. Is it possible to have a new world order where we coordinate across the globe? That is the only solution, but I fear it's something that we simply won't attain in my lifetime or my children's lifetime. Now more than ever, we need a true leader, a country that can bring us all together, one that is strong enough and has the will to sacrifice for the greater good of the world. Unfortunately, such a country doesn't exist anymore. Perhaps the largest nations can come together. I don't know. Is there any positive outcome from this? I find it very hard to think of one, but perhaps we will now recognize that we don't have to consume as much energy. We don't need to fly to conduct our business if we can hold remote meetings. Perhaps we don't have to travel so far to play on the weekends. Maybe we learn to conserve a little more in terms of food. Perhaps we all know that we can take life a little more slowly, stopping to smell the flowers. What will happen, though, when things return to normal? The mad race to accelerate the economy will consume us all, and the cycle will begin again. There is hope, but there is also the possibility that the future may be bleak. What we have learned is that economic progress across the globe is merely an illusion. To say I like his comments because they sound like a geologist, because he's still talking about the time cycle.
Yes, yeah. And remember to stop to smell the flowers sometime. We'll probably remember that more often now.
Yes.
Thank you, Cinti, for sharing this very passionate comment about the situation. Really appreciate. I'm going to read something now that Brian Romans wrote me through Twitter, a long tweet that he put together for us. Brian Romans is an associate professor of sedimentary geoscience at Virginia Tech. And he said about the main problems. The two big challenges happening right now are A, transitioning instruction or education to online-only delivery. While some of the content and activities are suited to virtual space, a lot of geoscience is not, for example, field-based and lab-based courses. Some of the virtual field trips and virtual microscope tools certainly help the situation, but we all know it's not the same. Many are working incredibly hard right now, trying to provide the best experience they can. The geoeducation community has stepped up to help each other by sharing resources and ideas. B, research that relies on fieldwork and lab work has stopped, or nearly so, due to travel restrictions and at least in the US not being allowed on campus. I have a graduate student who has planning on one more week of work in our lab to finalize the data set, but he cannot access the lab so that it is on hold for now. I have colleagues and heard several stories of field seasons planned for this summer either being in a wait-and-see mode or being canceled. This pause on research will especially impact the timelines of graduate students. For example, will departments allow extensions of their contracts? If so, how will that affect the overall budget of departments and their ability to bring in new students? Then Brian Romans tells us about the positive outcomes. As many have been discussing, all of us being forced to teach online could result in the geoeducators being collectively more knowledgeable about this method of instruction. Until now, many departments had a small number of faculty who were the resident experts, and many others who never did it. I could envision the next generation of online courses and activities being a step above what they might have been without this event. Maybe. And the third point, thoughts about the aftermath. Brian says, pondering this is what keeps me up at night. We're still in the midst of the crisis, so it's obviously difficult to predict anything right now. But a scenario that is not implausible is that undergraduate enrollment to some universities could drop. Perhaps some don't want to move away from their family and town after this, or the economic fallout might make it impossible for some to afford college. Or maybe overall numbers aren't affected, but instead of majoring in geoscience, they decide to major in epidemiology. In the context of graduate programs, however, I could envision a significant increase in applications and interest. People tend to decide to go to grad school when there are fewer jobs. If the post-pandemic recession is as big as some are projecting, there might be big numbers that apply to grad programs. But if undergrad programs remain steady or decrease in enrollment, there certainly won't be more teaching assistantship. Thus, the faculty advisors need to raise more funds to be able to support research assistantships, which in turn leads to question of what science funding will look like in a post-pandemic world. For example, I would love to take on more graduate students, but if my funding levels remain the same or diminish, I simply won't be able to afford the support more than just a couple of students. Again, it's difficult to predict right now. We are still in the middle of the crisis, but I'm trying to consider various potential outcomes and implications so I'm not surprised and can try to adapt as best as I can.
Yes, I think a lot of us are trying to stay flexible.
Flexibility.
That's one of the words of today. The next comments are from Christopher Jackson, a professor of basin analysis at Imperial College London in the UK. First, he says, the main problem is the uncertainty, not only with respect to work progress, etc., but also with regards to personal health and safety, as well as the well-being of our family, friends, and colleagues. Due to the latter uncertainty, it's hard to concentrate and therefore produce the best work you can. Work can't happen if people are feeling physically and mentally stressed. Secondly, I think the situation has brought out the best in some people in terms of collegiality, people sharing lectures and data, and understanding that as we all start to realize what is really important in our lives. We may also see some positive outcomes in terms of how we teach and how we use teaching-related technology. There's been some resistance to this in the past, but now we've been forced to adapt. And lastly, who knows? See my response to 1 and 2 in regards to what things will be like in the aftermath. I think, or at least hope, that generally speaking, the outcomes will be a net positive in terms of how we relate to and understand each other, as well as how we communicate and work together in more efficient ways. In terms of the British geo community, I sense it as the same as everywhere else. People are, after all, just people. It's at times like this that being a geologist or a teacher or a shop worker, etc., kind of just falls away for some time. Obviously, those different groups have different things to think about, but our concerns are that were previously expressed as far as the priorities of our, understanding how our loved ones are doing and making sure that we're dealing with things when we're physically and mentally stressed. Those are all similar concerns we all share, regardless of what our profession is.
Thank you, Chris, for your comments. Also, Chris reached me out through Twitter, and through Twitter also I connect with let's say an anonymous researcher at the Bureau of Economic Geology in Austin, in Texas, the so-called BEG, and he or she says. It's probably best if I don't try to answer these questions, Daniel, partly because I'm still trying to figure out what the heck is going on. That is, I don't want to say something stupid. And second, I'm afraid I would come across very pessimistic, and I don't want everybody to know that deep down I'm very pessimistic. So I brought this up because some of us were like that, and sometimes we don't want to show up now in this moment of the crisis with pessimistic views.
But it was an honest answer, and I think that's why it's
Yeah,
good to hear and share from everybody's different viewpoints, because there's a wide variety of how people react to these situations.
yeah. In a way, also Sinti, the chair of the Department of Rice, said that he is scared and pessimistic in a way. Or also the president of the Geological Society of Italy, very laconic and sharp on his
Yeah.
pessimism in the middle of the tsunami.
Yes.
And talking about Italy, we have another guest that is sharing his views with us. His name is Donato Giovannelli. And Donato is a researcher at the University of Naples in south of Italy.
Okay, and I can review some of his comments. He started off with describing the problems. So, despite the strong push for the digitalization of our lives, the speed and reliability of the network across the country is very heterogeneous and often not enough quality to sustain such intense traffic. So, this has resulted in delays and problems for the people and students using the network for work and for classes. We will need a much higher investment in digital infrastructure in the near future. That's very true. While online teaching is doing its job, physical presence is sorely missed by many. I'm one of those missing the in-person interactions with my students. I strongly believe that the university is not just the place where encyclopedic knowledge is given to the students, but it is a place where critical thinking and strong societal values are nurtured and passed on by the former generation, the professors, to the next generation of citizens. This cannot be done in short, structured, and often one-way online sessions. In fact, the online teaching could end up rebuilding the academic ivory tower that we've worked so hard to dismantle. The final problem that emerged from all this is the presence of strong inequalities among the student population. Many of the students coming from less developed areas of the countries or from less wealthy families might simply not have access to computers, tablets, and high-speed internet connection necessary to join these online classes. Education should be the means to erase inequality, not exacerbate it. The positive outcomes that he sees: Italy had a very positive, heartwarming, and soul-lifting response to this epidemic and to the strong restrictions imposed. People are helping each other, and thousands of doctors and health workers have volunteered to work in the most effective areas to help their colleagues and the general population. Neighborhoods started singing and dancing from their windows and balconies, playing music together across the streets. Nobody here has lost their good spirit and their joy of living. Several businesses have moved to remote smart working to keep going. Among these, the universities were the fastest to respond to the shift toward online work. And in a matter of a few days, all classes, exams, and graduations were moved to online platforms. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a call to a digitalized future. After this pandemic, I think we could start a deep introspection, both as human society and human species, about the values and principles we organize and develop our society, economy, and humanity around. Unless we do this and reconsider a profound way our place in nature and our interaction with each other and the environment, this pandemic will go heaving without teaching us anything. And the next one might well be the one that wipes out human society. The other potential positive outcome of this pandemic could be that finally society embraces science and it is finally willing to let knowledge, in its most fundamental meaning, guide our future. For a long time, science skepticism has been deeply ingrained into the general population, especially in certain cultures. I hope that the need to reach for knowledge and science will go beyond this pandemic and help change the direction society has taken with regard to other issues, like the no vaccine movement or the denial of climate change.
Interesting window in Italy.
Yeah.
Window that shows what's the situation in Italy. We're going to open another window in a very peculiar country right now, which is Venezuela. I'm going to read what I received as a feedback from the student Pedro Vicente Barguillas Bielma, a graduate student of the Department of Geophysics in the Universidad de Simón Bolívar in Caracas. Problems. COVID has paralyzed Venezuela, which is immersed in a serious economic crisis. Classes and activities are suspended, and some are carried out by digital means, which are online classes. The few teachers with IT skills or internet connection do their best. Keep in mind that Venezuela's internet is the worst in Latin America. The situation in Venezuela is politically and socially delicate. The economy has been in crisis for more than 4 years. Just think about hyperinflation. And the issue of COVID has not affected the poorly treated Venezuelan society so much. A quarantine isolation was implemented and it will end in the mid of April. Positive outcomes. As a frequent user of LinkedIn, I've seen free webinars promotions that have encouraged interactions among geoscience students of different disciplines. The webinars that interest me are related to the oil exploration industry. The aftermath. The Venezuelan geological community will emerge from the crisis as the country emerges from the crisis. Currently in Venezuela, a large percentage of experienced professionals and recent graduates migrate to other countries in search of opportunities. There are almost 7 million Venezuelans who have migrated, and the population is approximately 32 million. That tells you about the migration phenomenon. The geological community will move forward only if the country moves forward. However, not everything is negative. The few Venezuelan geoscientists still in the country are trying to do something. A National Geoscience Congress is being organized for September 2020. In the Congress, the country's main geoscientists and the new leader of students will meet to discuss. Venezuela is a country rich in natural resources and in human worth. So thank you, Vicente, for your feedback. And this connects with a nice group of Latino people. It is called Geolatinas. It is about women in geoscience that they have a legacy related to South America, Central America, but not only. They embrace many more women that they want to connect with Geolatinas.
And so their comments are as follows. We are actually avoiding the topic of COVID-19 and are mainly engaged in supporting the Geolatinas. We did it through virtual yoga classes, our daily writing and accountability meeting, 3 weekly meetings with Connect with Geolatinas, where we share what we're doing to stay positive and motivated to work from home. That's what we do. We support each other. We're optimistic. We support Latinas who are studying abroad and are now isolated and without family. So it sounds like they're definitely helping fill an important role right now.
Yes, they are very active. They have a lot of followers. The president is Clara Rodriguez. She has great collaborators, Rocío, Adriana, Isamar, that I met in some of the previous Minute Geology interviews. They also do karaoke and Zumba. They are very eclectic, and they also do the writing and accountability meetings, especially for academics. And I have to highlight that it can't be forgotten the worries that they have for their loved ones, which in most cases they are very far away and sometimes in difficult situations. So gracias Clara, gracias Rocío, Adriana y Samara por Geolatinas y por el feedback que me habéis mandado. So I think that we have maybe some programmatic issues that we can talk about just to remember the listeners and the viewers what's going on at least with GSA and AAPG.
Yeah, so we've got a response from GSA. Vicki McConnell, she's the GSA Executive Director. I think we mentioned her previously, but as she says, our goal is to deal with the challenges of COVID-19 as proactively, thoroughly, and thoughtfully as we can. So these decisions are not easy, and we understand that we must all do our part to flatten the curve. GSA remains open for business on a regular schedule, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, with employees working remotely to respect social distancing guidelines. We continue to be responsive to emails and phone calls from members, partners, and other stakeholders and strive to minimize disruptions. We'll update you should anything change. The spring leadership meetings will be held virtually for the protection of all involved. The remaining 3 regional section meetings scheduled for May have been canceled, but we're committed to finding innovative ways to continue delivering programs and services. So watch for updates about virtual options for these meetings. GSA allows members to download for free books and magazines written by geoscience teachers for geoscience teachers, including earthquakes, deep time, fossils, forensic geology, to make students detectives of the earth. And GSA allows members to download these free resources on a wide range of topics in the GSA store.
Yeah. And then, as I said, we couldn't receive in time the answers from the AAPG president, but he's following closely the situation in the website of AAPG. It is said that as we are still several months out, the AAPG's annual convention and exhibition, which is known as ACE, is scheduled to take place as planned, which is June 7th to June 10th in Houston. The association is evaluating all scenarios and will dedicate the resources necessary to ensure a safe and productive event. We will assess new health and safety information promptly and update our event schedules as warranted. The APG website shows that URTEC in Colorado has been postponed, which was planned for April 16th. Instead, there are events planned in Africa, like in Mozambique or Middle East, in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Abu Dhabi. They have not been postponed. And this will be held in April and May. What about you, Katie? What do you think about this situation?
Because I get to cheat now because I already answered these questions, but now I've also had more time to think about it and appreciate some of the other answers that we just heard. I think I kind of learned a lot, and I like having the opportunity to reflect on a few different angles. But I can say, I think the problems we all see pretty similar. It's hard. You can't get out in the field. You can't get to the lab, especially for students. I think students are going to be hit really hard for a lot of this. I think those of us that work in an office normally 9 to 5, now our office is in our house, but we can probably do 80% of what we were doing normally. I work at a lab, so fortunately for people in the oil industry, we are classified as essential. So the laboratory is still running and we can still analyze samples. We've modified things to make sure social distancing rules and, so the schedule has been shifted and people aren't working so close together. So that causes a little bit of a problem. It's a new way of doing things. But I certainly appreciate that we're in a better situation than a lot of other geoscience communities are. I'm an optimist, or as other people say, I'm such an extreme pessimist. I'm always so pleasantly surprised by how things work out. But so I do think there will be some positive outcomes, as other people have touched on, just better management of our resources, whether that be our natural resources and, reducing travel and our carbon footprint, but also our mental resources, reevaluating, did you have to have a 2-hour meeting with everybody in the conference room? Or could you have dealt with that over email? Or, who do you really need to be in contact with to make these decisions? Making a lot of our work just more efficient and more purposeful. So I think that's a benefit. I think that's a good thing. I like working from home. I don't know that everybody in my family does, but I enjoy it. So again, not to make light of all of the very serious issues that are going on all over the world right now. But for myself, I do enjoy being able to take time and smell the flowers, and I try to appreciate that. I really do. And then lastly, I think one of the other positive outcomes is because I happen to be married to a geologist, I get to have technical conversations, interactions on a daily basis, even when I work from home. So I'm kind of unique in that situation. And even as we've discussed, I like hearing a lot of the feedback from the teachers on the free online instruction, because I also have some kids who I know, because we're teaching them from home, have sessions on planetary geology and even plate tectonics. And if they want to be taught by their parents, I now have a lot of other resources I can look to that they should be using. But at the end of the day, in the aftermath, I hope the positives still exist. I hope we appreciate and embrace flexibility and appreciate and embrace our community, both the geoscience community and the community at large. I think Cindy's response from Rice University really kind of speaks to me. I do hope that we take this opportunity as humanity to really reconsider what can we do better for all of us, and talk about a better definition of the greater good.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for helping me, helping Mini Geology to this long session of readings verbatim. I hope that the audience, listeners, and viewers, they can appreciate that. And so this was another program of Mini Geology show, not only radio right now. Moving on, and give us feedback. You can write at minigeology@gmail.com. You can listen and view this at the YouTube channel, minigeology.com. So thank you, everybody. Thank you above all you, Katie. And
thank you,
next
everybody.
week we have another program. Bye, Katie.
Ciao.